Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Hope and watched the stars through the big window in front of him. The ship was huge and carried 50,000 people who were all that was left of humanity. These people had run from their homes when the monsters came. The monsters were called the Void Swarm, and they ate everything they found. Jake looked tired because he had not slept well for many days. His hair was getting gray, even though he was only 40 years old. The worry about keeping his people alive was making him old fast. He turned when he heard footsteps behind him. Lisa Carter walked up to him with a datapad in her hands. She was the chief science officer and one of the smartest people on the ship. Her face looked very serious, and Jake knew she had bad news for him. "Captain, we just got a message from the colony on New Terra," Lisa said. "The swarm found them 3 days ago." Jake felt his heart sink. New Terra had 20,000 people living there. They had thought they were safe because the planet was far from where the swarm had been seen before. "How many got away?" Jake asked, even though he was afraid to hear the answer. "None, sir," Lisa said quietly. The swarm ship surrounded the planet before anyone could escape. They sent one last message saying the creatures were coming down from the sky. Jake closed his eyes and tried not to think about what happened to those people. The swarm did not just kill humans. They took them apart and used the pieces to make more of themselves. It was worse than death. "That makes it 15 worlds in 3 months, Jake said. "How many people are left out there?" Lisa looked at her. Datapad. "We think maybe 200,000 people are still alive on different ships and hidden colonies. But the swarm is finding them faster now." Jake walked over to his chair and sat down hard. When the swarm first came 15 years ago, humans had lived on over 100 worlds. There were billions of people spread across the galaxy. Now there were so few left that they could all fit in one city. The door to the bridge opened and Admiral Kevin Torres walked in. He was in charge of all the ships that were still fighting the swarm. His uniform was clean, but his face showed how tired he was. Behind him came Dr. Amanda Foster, who studied the swarm creatures. "Jake, we need to talk," Kevin said. "All the ship captains and colony leaders are meeting in 1 hour. We have to decide what to do next." "What is there to decide?" Jake asked. "We keep running and hope we can stay ahead of them." Amanda stepped forward. She was younger than the others, but she had learned more about the swarm than anyone else. "Captain, I have been studying the creatures we captured last month. There is something strange about them." "Strange how?" Jake asked. "They are not natural," Amanda said. "Someone or something changed them. The way their bodies work is too perfect. No creature evolves to be this good at destroying other life." Lisa looked interested. "You think someone made them into weapons?" "I am sure of it," Amanda said. "The question is who and why." Kevin sat down in the chair next to Jake. "Does it matter who made them? They are still trying to kill us all." "It might matter," Amanda said. "If we can find out who made them, we might be able to find a way to stop them." Jake thought about this. For 15 years, humans had tried to fight the swarm with guns and bombs and spaceships. Nothing worked. The creatures just kept coming, and they learned from every attack. They got smarter and stronger, while humans got weaker and fewer. "How long do you think we have?" Jake asked Lisa. "The way they are finding our hiding places now, I think maybe 6 months," Lisa said. "After that, there will be nowhere left to run." The room got very quiet. Everyone knew that Lisa was probably right. The swarm ships were faster than human ships. They could track humans across space in ways that no one understood. Every time humans thought they had found a safe place, the creatures showed up and destroyed everything. "There might be one more option," Amanda said slowly. "But you are not going to like it." "Tell us," Kevin said. "We stop running and start learning," Amanda said. "We catch one of their ships and study it. We find out how they work, and maybe we can find a weakness." Jake stared at her. "That is suicide. No one has ever captured a swarm ship." "Because no one has really tried," Amanda said. Everyone just wants to run away. But running is not working anymore. Kevin stood up. Even if we could catch one of their ships, what then? We have studied the pieces of dead creatures before and learned nothing useful. This would be different, Amanda said. We need a living ship with living creatures inside. We need to see how they think and how they work together. Jake looked out the window again at the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was hunting. They never stopped, and they never gave up. Maybe Amanda was right. Maybe it was time to stop running and start fighting back in a new way. We will talk about this at the meeting, Jake said. But I want you to know that this plan sounds crazy. All the best plans do, Amanda said with a small smile. The meeting room was full of angry voices. Ship captains and colony leaders sat around a big table arguing about what to do next. Some wanted to run deeper into space where the swarm had never been seen. Others wanted to split up so the creatures could not find them all at once. Dr. Amanda Foster stood at the front of the room, waiting for her turn to speak. Next to her was Dr. Ryan Blake, who had just arrived from the research station called Sanctuary. He had been studying swarm creatures for 3 years and had made some important discoveries. Admiral Kevin Torres hit the table with his hand to make everyone quiet. "We have heard all your ideas about running and hiding," he said. "Now, Dr. Foster has something different to tell us." Amanda stepped forward. "We want to catch a swarm ship," she said simply. The room exploded with angry shouts. Captain Morrison held up his hand for quiet. "Explain how this would work," he said. "Dr. Blake found something in the creatures we have studied," Amanda said. "Tell them, Ryan." Ryan Blake was a thin man with thick glasses who did not like talking to large groups. But he knew his work was important, so he cleared his throat and began to speak. "The swarm creatures are connected to each other in ways we do not understand," he said. "They share thoughts across space using something like quantum physics. When one creature learns something, they all learn it. We already knew they worked together," said Captain Susan Wright, who commanded the transport ship Liberty. "That does not help us, but it might," Ryan said. "I found traces of original DNA in the creatures. Before someone changed them, they were a different species, a peaceful species that just wanted to live and grow." General Patricia Hayes, who commanded the Marine forces, leaned forward. "You are saying someone turned them into weapons?" "Yes," Ryan said. "And whoever did it might have left a way to control them or stop them." Engineer Commander Steve Parker had been quiet during the meeting, but now he spoke up. "Even if that is true, we would need a living ship to study. No one has ever captured one." Amanda pulled out a data pad and showed it to the group. "Steve has been working on a plan." "Tell them," Steve stood up. He was a big man who had built many of the weapons humans used to fight the swarm. "We use a stealth ship to get close to a small swarm vessel. We hit it with an electromagnetic pulse to shut down its systems, then board it before it can call for help." "That is suicide," said Captain. "Right. The moment we get close, they will sense us." "Not if we use the right approach," Steve said. "I have been studying their patrol patterns. They send out single ships to scout ahead of the main fleet. If we catch one of those scouts near a dead planet, where there is a lot of metal in the air, it might hide our ship long enough." Lieutenant Danny Wright raised his hand. He was Susan Wright's younger brother and one of the best pilots in the fleet. "I volunteer to fly the mission," he said. "Danny." "No," his sister said quickly. "This is too dangerous. Everything we do now is dangerous," Danny said. "At least this way we might learn something useful." Admiral Torres looked around the room. "Who else supports this plan?" Several hands went up, but not many. Most of the leaders thought it was too risky. Father Nathan Brooks, who was the religious leader for many of the survivors, stood up. "We should not be trying to understand these creatures," he said. "They are evil, and we should focus on getting away from them." "Running is not working," said Dr. Lisa Carter. "We lose more people every month." The argument went on for 2 hours. In the end, Admiral Torres made the decision. "We will try the mission," he said, "but only with volunteers and only with a small team." 3 days later, Lieutenant Danny Wright sat in the pilot seat of a small stealth ship called Shadowrunner. With him were 5 other volunteers, including Pilot Officer Casey Morgan, who was his best friend. They were flying toward a dead planet called New Geneva, where a swarm scout ship had been seen. The planet below them was gray and lifeless. The swarm had eaten everything that lived there 2 years ago. Now it was just rock and metal and empty cities. The metal in the atmosphere would help hide their ship from swarm sensors. "Target spotted," said Casey from the co-pilot seat. "Swarm." Scout vessel 2 kilometers ahead, Danny could see the alien ship through his window. It was black and moved in a way that reminded him of a swimming fish. It was smaller than most swarm ships, but still twice the size of Shadowrunner. "Electromagnetic pulse ready," said Technical Sergeant Laura Bennett from the weapons station. "Remember, the plan," Danny said to his team. "We hit them fast and board before they know what happened. If this goes wrong, we all die, but maybe the data we send back will help someone else succeed." Danny pushed the ship forward, and they flew closer to the swarm vessel. When they were only 100 meters away, the alien ship suddenly turned toward them. "They know we are here," Casey shouted. "Fire the pulse," Danny yelled. The electromagnetic weapon hit the swarm ship, and its lights went out. But instead of drifting helplessly, it started to glow with a different kind of light. "It is adapting to our weapon," Bennett said. "We have maybe 30 seconds before it calls for help." Danny flew their ship right up against the swarm vessel, and his team used cutting tools to make a hole in its hull. They went inside wearing spacesuits and found the ship was full of a thick liquid that glowed green. "The creatures are in here somewhere," Bennett said as they moved through the ship. They found 3 swarm creatures floating in the green liquid. The aliens looked like giant insects with too many arms and glowing eyes. Danny and his team used special containers to capture the creatures and samples of the liquid. "We have what we came for," Danny said. "Let us get out of here." But as they ran back to their ship, alarms started going off. The swarm vessel was calling for help and other ships were coming. "I will stay behind and slow them down," Casey said. "You get the samples back to the fleet," Casey no Danny said, but his friend was already running back into the alien ship with explosives. Danny and the others barely made it back to their ship before Casey's explosives went off. The swarm vessel was destroyed, but Casey was gone. As they flew away, Danny could see more swarm ships arriving, but it was too late for them to follow. When they got back to the fleet, Dr. Blake and Dr. Foster were waiting for them. The samples they brought back would change everything. Dr. Ryan Blake worked in his laboratory for 3 days without sleeping. The samples that Lieutenant Danny Wright brought back were unlike anything he had seen before. The green liquid from the swarm ship was alive, and it seemed to learn from everything around it. Dr. Amanda Foster worked with him as they studied the captured creatures. The aliens were still alive, but they had gone into some kind of sleep state. Their bodies were changing slowly, and Blake was afraid they were adapting to being prisoners. "Look at this," Amanda said as she pointed to her computer screen. "The liquid contains millions of tiny machines mixed with organic cells. It is like they combined technology with biology." Blake nodded as he looked at the data. "But see here in the genetic code. There are parts that do not belong. Someone added instructions to make these creatures into weapons." Captain Jake Morrison came into the laboratory wearing a breathing mask. The air in the lab was full of chemicals that could be dangerous. "What have you learned?" he asked. "These creatures used to be something else," Blake said. "Someone changed them into killers, but they left the original DNA intact. It is like they wanted to be able to change them back someday." "Change them back into what?" Morrison asked. Amanda pulled up another screen. "We think they were a species that could adapt to any environment. They could change their bodies to survive anywhere. That is why whoever controlled them made them into the perfect weapon." Blake was looking at something else on his computer. "Jake, there is something else. I think I can use their adaptation ability to help humans, Morrison stepped back. What do you mean? If I can modify the process that changed them, I might be able to make humans stronger and faster, strong enough to fight the swarm, Blake said. That sounds incredibly dangerous, Morrison said. You want to change human DNA? Not permanently, Blake said quickly. Just temporarily, long enough to give us an advantage in battle. Morrison shook his head. I cannot approve that. We do not know what it would do to people. But Blake had already been thinking about this for days. He believed it was the only way to save humanity. That night, when everyone else was asleep, he started working on his secret project. 3 weeks later, Sergeant Laura Bennett came to see Dr. Foster. Bennett was dying from a disease she caught during the war. The doctors said she had maybe 2 months to live. I heard about the experiment Dr. Blake is doing, Bennett said. I want to volunteer, Foster was surprised. How did you hear about that? It is supposed to be secret. Word gets around on a ship this size, Bennett said. I am going to die anyway. If there is a chance this could help win the war, then I want to try it. Foster knew she should say no, but she also knew Bennett was right. If they did not find a way to fight the swarm soon, everyone would die anyway. The process is very dangerous, Foster said. It might kill you faster than the disease will. I understand, Bennett said. But if it works, maybe other people can use it to fight back. 2 days later, Bennett was lying on a table in Blake's secret laboratory. Blake had been working day and night to create a serum that would give humans some of the swarm's abilities. Foster was there to monitor Bennett's vital signs. Are you ready? Blake asked Bennett. Do it, she said. Blake injected the serum into Bennett's arm. At first, nothing happened. Then Bennett started to scream as her body began to change. Her muscles grew larger and her bones became stronger. But the worst part was what happened to her mind. I can hear them, Bennett said as she grabbed Blake's arm. The swarm creatures. They are talking to each other and I can understand what they are saying. Foster checked her instruments. Her brain activity is off the charts. The serum is connecting her to the swarm's communication network. Blake was excited and terrified at the same time. What are they saying? Laura. Bennett closed her eyes and concentrated. They are planning something big, a final attack on the remaining human colonies. They know where we are hiding. This news was so important that Blake had to tell Captain Morrison, even though it meant revealing his secret experiment. Morrison was angry, but he was also impressed by the results. How long will the changes last? Morrison asked. We do not know, Foster said. Laura is stronger and faster than any human has ever been, but she is also connected to the enemy in ways we do not understand. Word of the experiment spread quickly through the ship. Some people were excited and wanted to volunteer for the treatment. Others were horrified and said Blake had gone too. Father Nathan Brooks led protests against the experiments. We are losing our humanity, he said to crowds of angry people. These changes will turn us into monsters just like the swarm political leader Helen Murray agreed with Brooks. We should be finding ways to escape, not ways to become like our enemies, she said, but Admiral Kevin Torres supported Blake's research. If this gives us a way to fight back, then we have to try it, he said. Captain Morrison was torn between the two sides. He could see that the enhanced soldiers might be their only hope, but he was also afraid of what humanity might become. Meanwhile, Bennett was learning to control her new abilities. She could run faster than a speeding car, and her wounds healed, in minutes instead of days. But the connection to the swarm was getting stronger, and she was afraid she might lose herself. I can see through their eyes sometimes, she told Blake. I know what they are planning and where they are going, but I can also feel their hunger. They want to consume everything, and I am starting to understand why. Blake realized he had created something more dangerous than he intended. The enhanced humans might be able to fight the swarm, but they might also become something that was no longer human. We need more volunteers, Torres said during a meeting with the other leaders. If Bennett can do this, then others can too. And if they all lose their humanity, Morrison asked. What then? Then at least our species will survive, Torres said, even if it survives as something different. Bennett stood outside the meeting room, listening to them argue about her future. She could feel the swarm getting closer, and she knew they did not have much time left. Soon they would have to choose between remaining human and remaining alive. She touched the wall and felt the metal respond to her enhanced senses. The ship was alive with the thoughts and feelings of 50,000 people. She could protect them, but only if she was willing to become something they might not recognize as human anymore. Lieutenant Danny Wright stood in front of Dr. Blake's laboratory, waiting for his turn to receive the enhancement treatment. 6 other pilots had volunteered to become like Sergeant Laura Bennett. They called themselves the Adapted, and they were about to become humanity's new weapon against the swarm. Bennett came out of the laboratory looking different than before. Her eyes glowed slightly in the dark, and she moved like a hunting cat. The enhancement had changed her in ways that went beyond just making her stronger. It will hurt, she told Danny, but the pain goes away after a few hours. The hard part is learning to control the connection to the swarm. Danny nodded. He had been thinking about this decision for weeks. His friend Casey Morgan had died getting the samples that made this possible. Now Danny wanted to use those samples to fight back. What is it like hearing their thoughts? Danny asked. Like having a radio in your head that you cannot turn off, Bennett said. But it also means I always know where they are and what they are planning. Dr. Blake came out of the laboratory wiping his hands on a towel. We are ready for the next volunteer, he said. The enhancement process took 3 hours. Danny felt like his body was being taken apart and put back together. When it was over, he could see things he had never noticed before. Every sound was clearer, and every color was brighter. But the strangest thing was the voices in his head. He could hear the swarm creatures talking to each other across space. They spoke without words, using thoughts and feelings instead of language. They are coming, Danny said as soon as he could speak again. 3 ships heading for the mining colony at Titan's Rest. They will be there in 2 days. Admiral Torres was in the laboratory when Danny gave this information. How many ships? He asked. Danny closed his eyes and listened to the swarm voices. 12 patrol vessels and 1 larger command ship. They think the colony only has basic defenses. They are right, Torres said. Titan's Rest has maybe 1,000. People and no military ships. Bennett stepped forward. The Adapted can get there first if we leave now. Our fighters are faster than normal ships because we can interface directly with the control systems. Torres looked at the enhanced soldiers. There were now 8 of them, and they all had the same strange glow in their eyes. You really think you can stop 13 swarm ships? We have advantages they do not expect, Danny said. They cannot adapt to us as quickly because we are connected to their network. We can predict what they will do before they do it. 6 hours later, the Adapted were flying toward Titan's Rest in modified fighter ships. The enhancement process allowed them to connect their minds directly to their ship's computers. This made them faster and more accurate than any normal pilot could be. Danny led the squadron with Bennett as his second in command. The other Adapted pilots followed them through space at speeds that would have been impossible for unenhanced humans to handle. Swarm ships detected, Bennett said through the mental link they all shared. 13 vessels as expected. They are not trying to hide. Why would they? Said pilot Rachel Green, who was one of the newest Adapted. They think humans are too weak to threaten them. The battle at Titan's Rest lasted only 20 minutes. The Adapted pilots attacked the swarm ships with a coordination that the aliens had never seen before. Danny and his team could predict every move the enemy made because they were listening to the swarm's battle communications. Target the command ship first, Bennett said as her fighter dove toward the largest swarm vessel. Without it, the others will be confused. The adapted fighters moved like they were part of a single organism. When one pilot attacked from the front, another would strike from behind. When the swarm ships tried to adapt to their tactics, the adapted changed their approach faster than the aliens could respond. By the end of the battle, all 13 swarm ships were destroyed, and none of the adapted fighters were even damaged. The people on Titan's Rest watched in amazement as their saviors landed on the colony's landing pad. But not everyone was happy about the victory. Colonel Graham Stone arrived on Titan's Rest the next day to investigate what had happened. He was suspicious of the adapted and did not trust them. "They are not human anymore," Stone told Captain Morrison during a private meeting. "Did you see how they moved during the battle? No human could fly like that." Morrison had watched recordings of the battle, and he had to admit that Stone was right. The adapted pilots had moved with an inhuman precision that was both impressive and frightening. "But they saved 1,000 lives," Morrison said. "Without them, Titan's Rest would have been destroyed. This time they fought for us," Stone said. "But what happens when the swarm connection gets stronger? What happens when they start thinking more like aliens than like humans?" Morrison did not have an answer for that question. The enhanced soldiers were becoming more powerful every day, but they were also becoming more distant from the rest of humanity. Meanwhile, Dr. Blake was working on a new breakthrough. He had discovered a way to give people temporary enhancements that would last only a few days instead of being permanent. "This could be the compromise we need," he told Dr. Foster. "People could receive the enhancement when they need to fight, and then return to normal when the battle is over." Foster was excited about this possibility. It would address the concerns about losing our humanity while still giving us the ability to fight back. The first test of the temporary enhancement was with Marine Private Carl Martinez. He volunteered to receive a dose that would last 72 hours. The process worked perfectly, and Martinez gained all the abilities of the adapted without the permanent connection to the swarm. But something went wrong on the second day. Martinez lost control during a training exercise and injured 3 other Marines before Bennett could stop him. The temporary enhancement had created unexpected side effects. "The partial connection to the swarm is unstable," Blake explained to the worried leaders. "It creates confusion and anger instead of the controlled connection that permanent enhancement provides." Admiral Torres made a difficult decision. "We will continue with permanent enhancements for volunteers, but we will limit the number of adapted soldiers. We cannot risk losing control of our own people." As the fleet prepared for larger battles against the swarm, Captain Morrison wondered if they were winning the war or just becoming something else entirely. The adapted were powerful, but they were also changing in ways that no one could predict. Bennett found Morrison on the observation deck looking out at the stars. "You are worried about us?" she said without being asked. "Should I be?" Morrison replied. "Yes." Bennett said, honestly, "We are not the same people we used to be, but we are still fighting for humanity, even if we are no longer completely human ourselves." Morrison looked at her glowing eyes and wondered if that distinction would matter in the end. Dr. Ryan Blake stood in front of a massive computer screen showing the locations of 7 swarm hive worlds scattered across the galaxy. Each world contained billions of the creatures and served as a control center for their war against humanity. Blake had spent months studying the quantum network that connected these worlds, and he believed he had found a way to destroy it. "Operation Resurrection will require perfect timing," Blake explained to the assembled fleet commanders. "We must hit all 7 hive worlds at exactly the same moment, or the remaining worlds will adapt and strengthen their defenses." Admiral Kevin Torres studied the battle plan with worry in his eyes. "We barely have enough ships to attack 1 hive world. How can we attack 7 at the same time? We split the fleet and use the adapted soldiers as our primary weapon," Blake said. "Normal humans cannot survive on the hive worlds, but the enhanced soldiers can." Sergeant Laura Bennett stepped forward. She now commanded all the adapted soldiers, and her connection to the swarm had grown much stronger. We have been listening to their communications for weeks. The hive worlds are expecting an attack, but they think humans will try to destroy them with bombs and missiles. Instead, we will plant quantum disruptors directly into their control centers, Blake continued. The adapted can reach places that normal soldiers cannot, and they can interface with alien technology in ways we never imagined. Captain Jake Morrison felt uneasy about the plan. What if the adapted get trapped on those worlds? We cannot rescue them. If something goes wrong, Bennett looked at him with her glowing eyes. We understand the risks, Captain, but this might be our only chance to win the war. The preparation for Operation Resurrection took 3 weeks. Human ships that had been hiding throughout the galaxy began moving toward their assigned targets. Each strike team was led by adapted soldiers who could navigate the dangerous environments of the hive worlds. Lieutenant Danny Wright was assigned to lead the attack on Nexus Prime, which was the largest and most important hive world. His team included both enhanced and normal humans who would work together to plant the quantum disruptor. Remember, the mission comes first, Wright told his team as they approached the alien world. If we fail here, all the other attacks will be for nothing. Nexus Prime was a planet covered in black metal structures that pulsed with energy. Millions of swarm creatures moved across its surface like insects in a hive. The sight of so many enemies would have terrified normal humans, but Wright and his adapted soldiers felt only determination. The landing was more difficult than expected. Swarm defenders attacked their ships as soon as they entered the atmosphere. Wright had to use all his enhanced abilities to pilot through the storm of enemy fire. Disruptor team to the surface, Wright ordered, as their ship crash landed near one of the metal structures. Defense team, hold this position as long as you can. Bennett's voice came through their communication system from another hive world. Multiple contacts on all targets. The swarm knows what we are trying to do. Wright and 2 other adapted soldiers ran toward the control center while normal humans fought to protect their escape route. The aliens had built their structures like mazes, but Wright could sense the right path through his connection to the swarm network. The control center is 3 levels down, Wright said as they cut through metal doors with energy weapons. Stay close and watch for traps. The deeper they went, the stranger the environment became. The walls were alive and responded to their presence. Wright realized that the hive worlds were not just cities, but living organisms that had been grown rather than built. When they reached the control center, Wright saw something that shocked him. The room was full of sleeping creatures that looked almost human but were much larger and had silver skin. These were not swarm creatures, but something else entirely. Blake, do you see this? Wright said into his communicator while recording everything. There are other aliens here. I think they might be the ones who created the swarm. Blake's voice came back filled with excitement and fear. Those are the architects. They are the species that designed the swarm as a weapon. We thought they were extinct. They are not extinct, Wright said as he moved closer to the sleeping architects. They are just waiting. I can sense their thoughts, and they are planning to wake up when the swarm finishes clearing the galaxy. Wright planted the quantum disruptor near the sleeping architects and activated it. The device began sending signals that would disrupt the quantum network connecting all the hive worlds. But as soon as it started working, the architects began to wake up. All teams report status, Admiral Torres said through the communication. Network. Disruptor planted and active, came the reply from 6 different teams. But the 7th team did not respond. Team 7, what is your situation? Torres asked with growing concern. Bennett's voice came through filled with static. Heavy. Resistance here. The swarm adapted faster than we expected. I do not think we can. The transmission cut off completely, leaving the rest of the fleet wondering what had happened to Bennett and her team. On Nexus Prime, Wright and his soldiers were running for their lives as the awakening architects sent new commands to the swarm creatures. The aliens were adapting to the quantum disruptors faster than Blake had predicted. The plan is not working, Wright said as they fought their way back to their crash site. The architects are taking direct control of the swarm, Blake's voice came, through their communicators with desperate urgency. All teams need to reach the Architect homeworld. The coordinates are being uploaded to your ships now. We have to stop them at the source. Wright looked at his remaining team members. Half of them were wounded, and their ship was badly damaged. Can we make it to another star system? We have to try, said Technical Sergeant Lisa Park, who was one of the normal humans on his team. If we do not stop the Architects, then everything we have done here was for nothing. As they lifted off from Nexus Prime, Wright could see that the quantum disruptors had caused massive damage to the swarm network. Millions of creatures were moving randomly without coordination. But he could also see that the Architects were regaining control and organizing their forces for a final attack on humanity. All surviving ships converge on the Architect homeworld, Admiral Torres ordered. This is our last chance. Wright set course for the coordinates Blake had provided. Behind him, Nexus Prime was burning as the damaged swarm creatures fought each other in confusion. But ahead of him lay an even greater challenge. The Architect homeworld was not a planet, but a massive artificial structure the size of a solar system. It had been waiting in deep space for millions of years while its creators slept and dreamed of the day they would rule the galaxy. How are we supposed to fight something that big? Asked Sergeant Park as she stared at the enormous structure on their screen. The same way we have fought everything else, Wright replied, together and with more courage than sense. As the surviving human ships approached the Architect homeworld, Wright could feel the presence of the ancient aliens pressing against his mind. They were old and powerful, and they considered humans to be nothing more than an annoying pest that needed to be eliminated. But Wright and the other adapted soldiers had learned something important during their connection to the swarm. Sometimes, the smallest pest could bring down the largest predator if it knew where to bite. The Architect homeworld stretched across space like a metal spiderweb connecting dozens of artificial planets. Each section pulsed with energy that had been building for millions of years, while the ancient aliens slept and waited for their servants to prepare the galaxy for their return. Lieutenant Danny Wright flew his damaged fighter toward the central hub where the most powerful Architects were awakening. Behind him came the scattered remains of humanity's fleet, including ships commanded by Captain Jake Morrison and Admiral Kevin Torres. Many vessels had been lost during the attacks on the Hive worlds, but the survivors were determined to finish what they had started. Sergeant Bennett, do you copy? Wright called through his communicator, hoping his friend had somehow survived the failed mission on Hive World 7. I am here, Danny, came Bennett's voice, weak but alive. My ship is damaged, but I made it to the Architect structure. I can see the control systems from here. Wright felt relief flood through him. Bennett and her team had been given up for dead, but somehow they had reached the enemy stronghold ahead of everyone else. Dr. Ryan Blake's voice came through the communication network from his position aboard Captain Morrison's ship. The quantum disruptors worked better than we hoped. The swarm network is collapsing, but the Architects are trying to rebuild it manually. How long do we have? Asked Admiral Torres as his battle group engaged Architect defense systems that looked like living metal serpents. Maybe 30 minutes before they regain full control, Blake replied. After that, they will be able to coordinate billions of swarm creatures for a final attack on Earth and the remaining colonies. Wright pushed his fighter through a storm of energy weapons as Architect defenses tried to stop the human assault. The ancient aliens had not expected such a direct attack, and their automated systems were struggling to adapt to human tactics. Bennett, can you reach the central control matrix? Wright asked as he fought his way deeper into the structure. I am almost there, Bennett replied. But Danny, there is something you need to know. I can feel what the Architects are thinking, and they have a backup plan. If we destroy this place, they will activate sleeper agents hidden throughout the galaxy. Wright felt his blood turn cold. What kind of sleeper agents? Swarm creatures that have been disguised as normal life forms for thousands of years, Bennett said. They are on every world where intelligent life evolved, including Earth. This changed everything. Even if they destroyed the architect, homeworld humanity would still face attacks from hidden enemies on their own worlds. "Blake, did you hear that?" Wright asked. "I heard it," Blake replied grimly. "But we still have to try. Maybe we can find a way to deactivate the sleeper agents when we take control of the architect systems." Wright reached the outer edge of the central hub and saw Bennett's ship attached to a massive structure that looked like a mechanical brain. Energy flowed through tubes that connected it to every part of the architect homeworld. "I am going to interface directly with their control systems," Bennett said. "My enhancement should allow me to access their technology, but I do not know if I will survive the process." "Laura, wait," Wright said as he landed his fighter near her position. "Let me go with you." "No, Danny," Bennett replied firmly. "You need to be ready to destroy this place if my plan fails. Take Dr. Blake's research data and get it back to the fleet." Wright watched helplessly as Bennett entered the Architect Control Center. Through their mental link, he could feel her consciousness expanding as she connected with technology that was older than human civilization. "I can see everything," Bennett said with wonder in her voice. "The architects have been preparing for this return for 10 million years. They created the swarm to clear the galaxy of younger species so they could rebuild their empire. Can you stop them?" Wright asked. "I can do more than that," Bennett said. "I can turn their own weapons against them." Wright felt the entire structure shudder as Bennett began sending new commands through the architect network. The ancient aliens who had been awakening across the homeworld suddenly found their own systems turning against them. "Laura, what are you doing?" Wright asked with concern. "I am rewriting their base programming," Bennett said, but her voice sounded different now. "The architects made one mistake. They built their control systems to interface with any enhanced consciousness, and my human brain is more adaptable than they expected." Through their link, Wright could feel Bennett's mind expanding beyond anything he had experienced before. She was becoming something new that was neither fully human nor fully alien. "The sleeper agents are being deactivated," Bennett said. "I am sending shutdown commands to every swarm creature in the galaxy." Wright watched through the structure's windows as architect defenses stopped functioning. The metal serpents that had been attacking human ships turned on their own creators instead. "Bennett, you need to get out of there," Wright said as he felt her consciousness slipping further away from humanity. "I cannot, Danny," Bennett said sadly. "If I disconnect from the system, the architects will regain control. Someone has to stay connected to keep them shut down permanently." Wright realized what she was planning to do. "Laura, no, there has to be another way." "This is the only way," Bennett said. "But I am not really dying, Danny. I am becoming something that can protect humanity for as long as the galaxy exists." Wright felt tears on his cheeks as he watched energy pour through the control center where Bennett had made her sacrifice. The entire architect homeworld began to break apart as its ancient systems overloaded. "All ships retreat to safe distance," Admiral Torres ordered, as explosions rippled across the massive structure. Wright flew away from the dying homeworld knowing that his friend was still inside it, but also knowing that she had chosen this fate to save everyone else. Through their fading link, he could feel her consciousness spreading across the galaxy as she took control of every swarm creature and every architect system. The war was over, but the victory had come at a terrible price. 6 months later, Wright stood on the observation deck of a space station orbiting a planet that had been reclaimed from the swarm. Below him, human colonists were building new cities, while former swarm creatures worked peacefully in the fields. Captain Morrison joined him at the window. "The Council approved your promotion to captain," Morrison said. "You will be commanding the new exploration fleet." Wright nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. "Sometimes I can still hear her, you know. Bennett, I mean. She is out there somewhere watching over all of us. The enhanced humans like you have become the guardians of our new colonies," Morrison said. "Bennett would be proud of what you have accomplished." Wright smiled for the first time in months. Humanity had not just survived the war against the swarm, they had evolved into something stronger and better than they had been before. The galaxy that the architects had wanted to rule for themselves was now home to millions of human colonies protected by enhanced guardians who remembered what it meant to be human. Children played in parks on worlds that had once been consumed by the swarm, while overhead ships crewed by both enhanced and normal humans worked together to build a better future. The war was over, and humanity had won not through destruction, but through the courage to change while holding on to the values that made them worth saving. Wright touched the window and felt the presence of his friend Bennett watching over them, all from her place in the network that now protected the galaxy. She had kept her promise to remain human even when she became something more.